Hi, I'm Carla. A few months ago, my parents fired me from the family company, said I was useless. They handed everything to my younger brother. What they didn't know was, I secretly owned the patent that kept their empire running. But the worst part wasn't losing my job. It was realizing how long they had been setting me up to fail. Quietly, coldly, while smiling to my face. They thought I would just walk away? I stepped into the office that morning the same way I always had. Keys in one hand, coffee in the other, mind already ticking through meetings and deliverables. Denver's late spring sun cast long lines across the lobby floor. Nothing felt unusual. Not yet. Inside the boardroom, the air was different. Thicker somehow, heavy with something I couldn't name at first. My father, Israel, sat at the head of the table, his fingers tapping against the polished wood in slow, sharp beats. My mother, Darlie, perched stiffly beside him, lips pressed tight. And then there was Skylar, my younger brother, lounging with a smug little tilt to his smile. I barely had time to set my coffee down when Israel cleared his throat. "Carla, let's not drag this out," he said, voice clipped. "We've decided it's time to inject fresh blood into the company's leadership." Fresh blood. That was their first knife. Darlie chimed in, her tone falsely sweet. "You've been invaluable for years, but the company needs a different energy now. Skylar's ready to take the reins." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What could I say? The walls seemed to shrink inward as their words dripped out. Outdated, stagnant, no longer fitting the future. They made it sound clinical, surgical even, as if they were doing me a favor by cutting me out. Skylar sat there, barely hiding his grin, drumming his fingers against the chair like he already owned it. "We'll make this as smooth as possible," Israel continued. "Severance package, of course. A few months to transition if you want it." I stared at them, feeling my throat tighten but refusing to show it. 9 years of blood, sweat, weekends sacrificed, and this was my reward. I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I just nodded once, sharply. Every word, every glance, every betrayal, they burned themselves into memory. I gathered my things slowly, every movement deliberate. As I zipped up my laptop bag, a flicker of cold satisfaction slid under the shock. They didn't know, they had no clue. 3 years ago, on a gut instinct and sleepless nights filled with doubts, I had patented the company's core operational system under my own name. Quietly, legally, tucked inside contracts they never bothered to read. Back then, part of me had felt guilty, like I was betraying family. Today, that guilt died. I slung my bag over my shoulder. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. As I stepped into the hallway, the heavy door thudding closed behind me, I let out a slow breath. The office lights blurred slightly in my vision, but not from tears. Inside me, a storm gathered strength. The drive home felt like floating through fog. I don't remember stopping at traffic lights or passing by the usual cafes and dry cleaners. Everything blurred together until I pulled into my apartment complex. The air inside my place was stale from being closed up all day. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and walked straight to my laptop on the small desk in the corner. No ranting, no pacing. I wasn't going to waste a single breath on anger they didn't deserve. I flipped open the laptop, the glow of the screen pulling me out of the dullness. My fingers moved automatically, password entered, documents opened. In a few minutes, I was staring at the file that mattered more than any severance check they could wave in my face. The patent. 3 years ago, after an especially brutal round of budget cuts that nearly gutted my department, I'd sat down with an old mentor, Mr. Albright, our former CEO, and laid out my fears. He was the one who said it, plain and simple. "Carla, protect your work. Protect yourself." He'd even helped connect me with an attorney to navigate the filings. Reading through the contract again now, I felt a weight lift from my chest. It was airtight. The system was mine, architected by me, patented by me, and licensed to Nexora under strict renewal terms they never read because they trusted that I was family. Tonight, that blind trust would cost them dearly. I clicked open a fresh email draft to legal@nexorasystems.com, HR@nexorasystems.com. kuklinski.board@nexrasystems.com. I added Israel's and Darley's emails for good measure. Subject line: Notice of Intellectual Property Licensing, Expiration, Immediate Action Required. The words flowed out cold, professional, cutting through the silence of my apartment like a knife. Per the licensing agreement outlined in Appendix D, Section 4, continued usage of the Nexera Core operational system without renewal constitutes a breach of contract and intellectual property violation. I listed every clause, every subpoint, every date. I attached the original patent registration. I made it impossible for them to wiggle out of it. By the time I was done, the night had deepened. Denver's skyline outside my window sparkled with office lights still burning. Somewhere in those towers, someone like me was probably working late, blind to the betrayal sneaking up behind them. Not me, not anymore. I reread the email twice, triple-checked for typos, and hit send. The moment my finger left the trackpad, a strange calm spread through me. It was done. Irrevocable. Whatever happened next was no longer my burden to carry. Across town, in offices where they thought the world was still spinning safely under their command, inboxes began to light up. Morning crept in while the city still slept. I brewed a pot of coffee, the bitter scent filling my kitchen, grounding me. There was no rush, no frantic pacing. I sat by the window, a quiet observer waiting for the cracks to spread. At Nexora's headquarters across town, the day wasn't starting so peacefully. By 7:45 a.m., the first alarms blared. Employee keycards failed to register. Client dashboards wouldn't load. CRM databases spun endless error messages. Phones began lighting up across departments, urgent client calls pouring in. Why can't I log into the portal? The system's down. We're losing business. What the hell is going on over there? Inside the executive wing, chaos spread faster than wildfire. Israel Keys stormed through the hallways, barking orders at IT teams already drowning in system failures. Darley was glued to the phone, trying to placate furious clients with the same rehearsed line. We're experiencing temporary technical issues. Please bear with us. Meanwhile, Skylar, the great fresh blood hero, paced the main conference room, jabbing at his phone like that alone could fix the collapse. Just reboot the servers, he snapped at a junior engineer. This is basic troubleshooting, for God's sake. The kid looked terrified but said nothing. Because anyone who knew even a shred of our system architecture understood. This wasn't a glitch. This was a structural failure, and it wasn't going to be solved by flipping a switch. Back in my little corner of the world, I sipped my coffee and refreshed Nexora's client-facing sites, still offline. I leaned back in my chair, my laptop balanced lazily on my knees. No malice, no joy either. Just the deep, cold satisfaction of seeing consequences land exactly where they belonged. A ping broke the silence. A message from Judith Barcy, my only true friend left inside that building. They're panicking. Israel's red-faced. Darley's blaming the tech team. Skylar just screamed at IT in front of everyone. I smiled faintly, taking another slow sip. This was only the beginning. The afternoon sun poured through my windows, warming the hardwood floors while I lounged in my favorite worn armchair, scrolling casually through news feeds. The coffee I had poured an hour ago sat forgotten, cold at my side. My world was still, almost serene, a sharp contrast to what was unraveling across town. My phone buzzed violently against the table. Then again, and again. Caller ID, Israel Keys, decline. Next, Darley Routier, decline. Skylar Keys, decline without hesitation. I watched the screen flicker, each missed call stacking higher like a pathetic tower of desperation. Texts followed, piling up fast enough to almost make me laugh. Call me back. We need to talk. Urgent. They sounded like a broken fire alarm, loud, insistent, useless. Switching over to my email, I wasn't surprised to find my inbox just as cluttered. Subject lines blurred together. Request for immediate meeting. Urgent licensing discussion. Please contact us ASAP. One stood out from the rest. A direct message from Nexora's board chair, Richard Kuklinski. It was short but painfully formal. We value your prior contributions and would appreciate an opportunity to discuss a mutually beneficial resolution. Translation? They were scared. A soft chime signaled another text, this one from Judith Barcy. The board's asking questions. HR looks like they're ready to cry. Skylar tried to blame IT in the executive meeting and got shredded by legal. I set the phone down, letting the information settle like dust after an explosion. This wasn't victory. Not yet. It was only the inevitable fallout from years of being underestimated. I pulled my laptop onto my knees again, flexed my fingers once, and began drafting a new email, one that would leave no room for negotiation. Terms of re-engagement, licensing fee, $1.2 million annually, non-negotiable. Public acknowledgement of patent ownership, mandatory, no reinstatement offer. I would work as an independent contractor only. I made sure every line was clear, sharp, and cold. I didn't lace it with anger. Anger was a waste of energy. This was about worth, and demanding what should have been recognized long ago. Once satisfied, I leaned back, rereading the email one last time. No typos, no soft spots. I pressed send without hesitation. The smile that crossed my face wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. Cold, clean, and overdue. The hum of my laptop was the only sound in the room as the email disappeared into cyberspace. I closed the lid slowly, feeling the tension bleed from my shoulders. Outside, the sun had started to sink behind the Denver skyline, leaving streaks of orange and purple across the sky. I didn't need to watch for a reaction. I already knew what was coming. Opening my tablet, I scrolled through a few tech forums and business sites. Nexora's name was beginning to pop up, in the worst ways possible. Client portal failures at Nexora Systems. Internal source says system crash not accidental. Rumors swirl of legal troubles hitting Nexora's infrastructure. I leaned back, letting the reports wash over me. This wasn't just a bad Monday for them anymore. This was a credibility hemorrhage. Satisfied, I opened a clean document and began formalizing my offer in writing. Licensing fee, $1.2 million annually. Public acknowledgement. System patented and designed by Carla Homolka. Quarterly license renewals required my direct approval for any system modifications. No exceptions, no loopholes. No chance for them to twist it later. It wasn't personal. It was structural. When the draft was perfect, I attached it to a new email addressed to Israel Keys, Darlie Routier, the Nexora Legal Department, and Richard Kuklinski, the board chair. The subject line was brutal in its clarity. Formal terms for licensing and system continuation inside. I laid out everything plainly. No negotiation room, no bargaining table, a strict 48-hour window to respond. Otherwise, I would issue a cease and desist order and escalate immediately to federal IP enforcement. I reviewed it once, then again. There was no anger in the words, only power, balanced carefully like a blade across the throat of their entire operation. Click, sent. I sat back, folding my hands behind my head, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a chess player who knew checkmate was inevitable. My phone vibrated against the table. I picked it up and stared at the screen. Israel is demanding a private meeting. Of course he was. The next morning broke crisp and clear, but my phone lit up with something darker. A single text from Judith popped onto the screen before my feet even touched the floor. Heads up, they're spreading rumors, calling you unstable. Be ready. For a second, the breath caught in my throat. Not from shock, more from a deep, slow-burning anger that moved through me like molasses. They hadn't learned. They wouldn't go quietly. I pulled on a sweatshirt, tied my hair up, and powered up my laptop. I didn't need to wonder long. Already whispers slithered through local business forums. Sources say the architect behind Nexora's infrastructure was mentally unfit to manage critical operations. Unconfirmed reports suggest internal instability led to system failure. Unconfirmed my ass. I knew exactly who was whispering in the dark. I clicked through screenshots methodically, capturing every post, every thread. Names, timestamps, IP traces when available. Emails came next. HR messages, legal queries, even a few panicked messages from low-level employees trying to play both sides. I saved everything, organized it into neat folders like evidence in a courtroom file. I wasn't scrambling. I was assembling a war chest. The betrayal didn't surprise me. What stung was how quickly they defaulted to character assassination, like it was second nature. Family. Right. By noon, I had already booked a virtual consultation with one of the best defamation lawyers in Denver. When we connected, her voice was crisp, no nonsense. Ms. Homolka, from what you've sent, this isn't just workplace gossip. This meets the threshold for actionable defamation, especially with the damage to your professional reputation. Good. That's all I needed to hear. We mapped out the next steps: formal cease and desist letters, preservation of evidence notices, possible damages claim if escalation became necessary. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was drawing a line in permanent ink. They could call me unstable all they wanted, but they were about to find out just how dangerous a calm, focused mind could be. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my lawyer's assistant. We can move fast if you're ready to escalate. I looked out the window, the Denver skyline gleaming in the afternoon sun like nothing was wrong. If they want a war, I whispered to myself, they'll find me ready. Morning light barely cut through my blinds when the next hit came. A text from Judith. Skylar just signed a contract with GlobalNet, using your system. No credit, no license. I sat there, the phone trembling slightly in my hand. Not from weakness, but from the kind of fury that came ice cold and absolute. They didn't just ignore the cease and desist. They didn't just smear my name. Now they were outright stealing. The next hour blurred in ruthless efficiency. Screenshots, public announcements, company newsletters boasting about the exclusive integration with GlobalNet, complete with Skylar's smug face plastered all over. Not a single word about licensing, not a single acknowledgement of the patent. Judith fed me everything she could grab from the inside. Email threads, copies of internal chats, even snippets from the botched contract itself. By noon, my lawyer's office had a fully documented file thick enough to crack a skull. Breach of licensing agreement, patent infringement, fraudulent misrepresentation to a major client. In short, career suicide, gift-wrapped and hand-delivered. My attorney leaned forward over the conference table, tapping the stack with manicured nails. If we move now, she said calmly, we can lock their assets before they even realize they're bleeding. I nodded. Do it. There was no pity left, no sentimental memories of childhood birthdays or Sunday dinners. They had crossed every line and there would be no walking it back. They wanted war. They would get extinction. As we finished mapping out the emergency filings, her assistant slipped a note onto the table. Estimated damages claim potential, $27.5 million minimum. I didn't blink. At that moment, Skylar, Israel, and Darley weren't family anymore. They were just defendants. My phone buzzed again. Judith this time. Board's furious. Kuklinski's demanding a full audit. Skylar's losing it. Israel's threatening to sue GlobalNet for bad faith. I smiled thinly. They had no idea. They still thought they could bluff, spin, bully their way out of this. They were about to find out exactly how much a storm could cost. Across the table, my lawyer smiled grimly. We can destroy them by Friday, she said. Are you ready? I didn't hesitate. Start the clock. By the time Friday morning rolled around, the storm they had unleashed was ready to crash down on them. I stepped out of my car and stood in front of Nexora's gleaming headquarters, a thick folder tucked under my arm. I wasn't the scared daughter they used to know. I was a force now, and today they would see it. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was toxic. Israel sat stiffly at the end of the long table, trying to project authority he no longer had. Darley was pale, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Skylar slouched with arms crossed, a scowl carved into his face. The board chair, Richard Kuklinski, nodded at me curtly when I entered. No warmth, just formality. My lawyer followed close behind, carrying the legal documents like weapons ready for battle. No greetings, no small talk, just war. I opened the folder and began. Patent registration certificates, cease and desist notices, copies of emails confirming Skylar's unauthorized contract, screenshots from public announcements, business forums, and leaked internal chats. Every word, every action, meticulously documented. Skylar tried to interrupt, his voice sharp and defensive. She's lying, she's... Mr. Keyes, my attorney cut in smoothly. You are advised to remain silent. Any further disruptions will be noted for the record. Skylar sank back in his chair, face burning. I didn't gloat. I just continued, laying out every piece until even the most stubborn board member couldn't pretend ignorance. When I finished, Kuklinski stood up, clearing his throat loudly. The board has reviewed the evidence, he announced. It is our decision to terminate Israel Keys and Darlie Routier, effective immediately. Skylar Keys is banned from all Nexora premises and operations pending legal proceedings. Dead silence. And, Kuklinski added, his voice heavy, we will issue a formal apology acknowledging Karla Homolka's rightful patent ownership and settle financially in her favor. Israel's face went gray. Darlie whimpered something I couldn't hear. Skylar slammed a fist against the table, sending pens scattering, but none of them looked at me. They couldn't. I gathered my folder, buttoned my blazer, and said my piece quietly, clearly. I never needed revenge. I needed respect, and now I've reclaimed it. I didn't wait for a response. They had nothing left to say that could matter. I walked out of that boardroom without looking back. The sunlight outside hit me like a fresh baptism, blinding but warm. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. The war was over. Weeks passed like the slow unfolding of a new season, and for once, time felt like it was moving with me, not against me. My new office was small, nestled above a quiet coffee shop in downtown Denver. It wasn't flashy, no marble floors, no gleaming conference rooms, just clean white walls, a sturdy desk, and a battered leather chair that I'd picked up from a secondhand store. It was mine. Every inch of it was earned, not inherited. Clients trickled in, cautious at first. Small businesses worried about intellectual property theft, tech startups eager to do things the right way. Word traveled fast in our industry. The woman who beat Nexora wasn't just tough. She was fair, reliable. Business journals ran features with titles like The Rise of Karla Homolka, Resilient Innovator, and Building Back Stronger After Betrayal. For the first time, people saw me without the shadow of my parents looming over my reputation. I was no longer the daughter of Israel Keys. I was simply Karla. Meanwhile, the fallout continued to rain down on the ones who tried to destroy me. Israel and Darlie faced ongoing audits from the SEC and IRS. Stories about Nexora's internal corruption started surfacing in local news outlets. The board had officially stripped their emeritus titles. Skylar disappeared from Denver altogether. Some said he fled to Arizona, trying to restart his life under a new name. Funny how fast the world moved on when the truth came out. But even with victory in my hands, the scars didn't vanish. There were nights when I woke up sweating, heart pounding, haunted by boardrooms full of silent judgment. There were moments when I caught a glimpse of an older couple across the street and felt an old ache, a longing for parents who could have been proud instead of petty. Forgiveness wasn't a light switch. It wasn't something you could summon just because justice was served. Healing, real healing, was quieter. It grew slowly, like the stubborn roots of a tree after a storm, and I was willing to let it grow. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I stood atop the terrace of my building, looking out at the city skyline. Denver shimmered under the setting sun, golden and vast, full of possibilities. I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. I wasn't even thinking about them. I was thinking about the future, about the doors I would open for myself, about the legacy I would build without asking anyone for permission. I smiled softly to myself, breathing in the cool night air. I was never asking for revenge, I whispered. I was asking to be seen, and now I see myself. Final closure. When they shut the door, I built a better one, and it leads exactly where I choose to go. Maybe the hardest lesson I learned through all of this is simple, but brutal. Family can fail you. Trust can be broken. Dreams can be stolen. But none of that defines who you are, unless you let it. I wasn't born strong. I had to become strong, one choice at a time. Not by yelling louder, not by fighting dirtier, but by standing up, even when nobody clapped. By rebuilding, even when no one believed in me. If you're facing betrayal, failure, or loss today, let me say this. You are not what they called you. You are who you choose to be tomorrow. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so strong, so brilliant, that they can't touch you, even with all their bitterness combined. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to start over after being underestimated or betrayed? Drop a yes in the comments if this story resonates with you, or tell me what city you're watching from. If you didn't like this story, that's okay too. Let me know why. I truly want to learn from you. And hey, if this message touched you even a little bit, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. More real, raw, empowering stories are coming your way, because no matter what doors close, together, we can build better ones.